In a famous lecture given more than half a century ago, the Oxford scholar J.R.R. Tolkien chided his audience, mostly comprised of Celtic specialists, by claiming, "Celtic of any sort is a magic bag into which anything may be put and out of which almost anything may come. Anything is possible in the fabulous Celtic twilight, which is not so much a twilight of the gods as of the reason." He was specifically referring to linguistic etymologies, but his words were true for Celtic studies in general, which, after nearly 300 years of introspection, had created a tissue of self-sustaining myths far removed from the reality of the available data. By throwing into the magic bag scraps gleaned from linguistics, classical sources, vernacular literature, archaeology and art history, and seasoning the mix with a dash of nationalism and no small amount of wishful thinking, there emerged resplendent the image of the Celt, an image fashioned by the needs and aspirations of those who created it. When Tolkien's lecture was published in the early 1960s, archaeologists were already beginning to feel uncomfortable with the generalized concept of Celtic society then broadly accepted, and in particular with some of the invasionist theories inherent in the traditional narrative. Indeed, some believed that the terms Celt and Celtic should be avoided altogether because they had led to distortions in the way the archaeological record was interpreted and presented. One writer regarded the ancient Celts of Britain and Ireland as a bogus and recent invention. Behind these early Celto-skeptic debates lurked an entirely different question. When and where did the Celtic language originate? The traditional view of Celtic origins was that Celtic culture emerged in the early 1st millennium BC, towards the end of the Late Bronze Age in West-Central Europe, the implication being that the language developed at the same time, and that it was from this homeland Celtic language and culture spread south, east and west to encompass much of the European peninsula. In the 1990s, an alternative hypothesis began to be considered, that the language developed much earlier in the Atlantic zone, perhaps as a lingua franca, and spread eastwards into the West and Central Europe during a period of mobility characterized by the Beaker phenomenon in the middle of the 3rd millennium. The debate is still continuing, and these are questions to which we will return. The subject of the ancient Celts, then, is one that generates much lively discussion. In this chapter, we will consider how the concept of the Celt has come into being and how it has changed over the last 2,500 years.